So, season cycles and sanity, rewilding for improved well-being. So to give you a sense of why this topic is so important to me, I'm going to take you back 20 years or so, which seems to be a theme tonight, teenagers, struggling teenagers. I was a perfectionist. I always was striving for external validation, always wanting to achieve more, but never really feeling enough, no matter how much I achieved. I always felt like I wasn't enough, and I was highly sensitive, so the things that happened in the world around me felt very overwhelming, and there was the hormones that were definitely challenging, but I didn't really know what was happening back then in the way that I know now. And so in conjunction with all the perfectionism, every month I would also feel like a complete loser. I would feel, fat. I would feel just like a waste of space, essentially. And so as a coping mechanism, I did self-harm as a teenager. And so to go back to that talk earlier, I think it is really important, if you do have teenage girls in your life, that you do talk about their menstrual cycles, because actually it's really key. And just as much as there is all the shitty stuff that happens, there are also some really amazing things that happens with our hormones that make us really good, like public speaking at certain times of the month. And I think it's seeing, as much as seeing the difficult stuff, it's seeing the beauty in our cycles as well. It's not all awful. So just for that point, I think it is really important, because self-harm is really prevalent among teenage girls. That wasn't part of my talk, but I just felt like it was an important thing to say, and it's something I've spoken about when I was working in mental health. So even this kind of carried on throughout my 20s, and even when I had the house and the partner and the dog, and so on the outside things looked good, still on the inside things didn't feel right. I still didn't feel like I was enough regardless. And what does any of this got to do with rewilding or your well-being? Well, for me, it has everything to do with it. Because whilst you have the side of rewilding that looks a lot at the physical side, so your posture, what we eat, like barefoot running, those kinds of things, and they are important, there's the other side, and it's about remembering what it means to be a living, breathing animal. And right now our society is making us ill. We have got increasing rates of anxiety, you only have to Google the statistics to see there are increasing rates of loneliness. And they say it's as harmful as 15 cigarettes a day now. It's not good for our communities. We need people who feel rooted in their lives. And when all the things on the outside look good, but you don't feel good on the inside, you're like this willow tree. You're just being blown. There's zero resilience there. So it's about putting those roots down. And I feel like that's so important and so needed, because at the moment our society is all kind of linear living. Is that hustle. It's the, constantly having to operate at this level all the time and never really taking into account that, it's winter, maybe we need to slow down a bit. So that's why for me it's just so important. It's about that remembering and that deconditioning, getting rid of all those shoulds. Right. So that's why I mentioned 17-year-old me, because I feel like she embodies a lot of what people struggle with now. The anxiety, the people-pleasing, the seeking validation. So when I talk about season cycles and sanity, rewilding for improved well-being, what I'm talking about is living in alignment with the seasons and our own cycles, and noticing and creating space to hear ourselves. Because one of my favorite sayings is, the body whispers before it screams, and how many of us ignore those nudges. We push through, and then we burn out. And it's not good for us. It's not good for our communities, and it's really not good for our planet. Not only are we destroying ourselves, we're destroying her too. So I am going to share 3 things that have really helped me when it comes to kind of rewilding for my well-being, and I share these with the caveat that, of course, what works for me may help you, but the most important thing, I think, in a society that is so quick to sell us 6 steps to success for everything, it's all about going out there and experimenting and finding what works for you, and knowing that what works for you right now might not be what works for you in the summertime and might change again in the autumn. And it's really tuning into that and giving yourself permission to change, because we are evolving living beings that change all the time. So, number one is all about listening to nature and observing the seasons and tuning into the seasons. You know, autumn teaches us that to drop leaves, to drop those things that are a drain on our resources when we need to be conserving energy moving into winter time, that time of slowing down. And of course, yesterday we saw spring equinox, which is a time now of thinking, what seeds do I want to cultivate in my life? You know, there is so much to be learnt from nature if we just slow down and notice what's going on. You know, when I feed the plants, I think, am I watering myself the way I'm watering my plant right now? Am I giving myself the same nutrition? Like, these are really fundamental things, but they get lost in the busy day-to-day because we've got stuff to do. Life is busy. And that brings me nicely onto my next point, which is all about creating an intuitive practice in your life. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean just creating regular space in your life. It doesn't have to be every day because, hey, people have kids, people have busy lives. It's impossible to do things all the time regimented. And again, it doesn't fit in with the whole we're changing beings. So it's about creating regular slots in your life for you to do things that connect you to you. So that could be yoga, but equally it could be dancing. It could be painting. It could be simply stretching for 5 minutes or having a warm drink. Any of those things that get us out of this busy space that's too noisy for intuition to come through and to get us into this space. And that's why I do the breathing before I do any kind of session with people, because it really helps me just get grounded and get connected and really feel in to what's going on in my body for me and what's going on in my heart, because those shoulds are so noisy. It's really about shutting that noise off. And if possible, and added would be create a ritual as well. Create rituals in your life. They're like habits, but special habits with intention. So I know if I sit down to write and I light a candle, I know that that's kind of my connection time. It feels good for me. And these things are just so important for our well-being because they build our resilience. They help us put down roots in our lives and feel connected to us. And so that takes me nicely to my final point, which is all about honouring your truth. And that kind of feels random in connection with rewilding, but it's everything to do with rewilding your well-being, because it's firstly being rooted in who you are, so you have that increased bounce back ability, because life is hard. Things happen, people die, marriages break down. We have to navigate those. It's not happiness all the time. But having that resilience to know that you've got this is really important. And as a community, we are hardwired for connection as humans. And when we're not showing up fully as us or honouring our truths, we're not really connecting. And that's a problem. That's what's leading us to things like loneliness and feeling lost and like an outsider. We're not really connecting because it feels vulnerable and scary, but we have to step up and start finding safe spaces to honour our truths. And do I have anything further to say to that? I think that's okay. I think it's healthy for the community, healthy for us. I think I made that point. But so, to end, I have a quote and a prompt. So my quote is, "Death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss in life is what dies inside of us while we live." And so my question is simply, as it was spring yesterday, what is awakening within you this spring? Thank you.